Tom Morey, inventor of the boogie board. Data is no longer static. There's oceans of data, and there's tides of data, and there's waves of data. And by God, if there's waves of data, then they can be served.
Writing the Data, presented by siliconangle.com, where computer science meets social science, and by wikibon.org, a wiki for sharing technology and business knowledge. Support from Greenplum, driving the future of data warehousing and analytics. Find your free data tools at greenplum.com. In an always-on, always-connected world, we are literally surrounded by data, swimming in an endless ocean of information. The desire to understand and make sense of all this information is one of the great challenges that businesses and individuals are facing today. Data flows constantly. Imagine data like confetti at a ticker tape parade. But now we expect and even require all the falling pieces to be instantly indexed, searchable, and usable, and for that data to be accessible at any time and anywhere by a multitude of devices. Every time we search, share photos, check into a location, use a social network, text, or touch the web in any way, we are creating a mesh of information that, when connected, helps paint a picture of not only what we're doing, but who we are.
With this piece of paper here, a visa, in a little booklet, which really doesn't have much information about me. Picture, name, how tall I am. This booklet has almost no information compared to what Facebook knows about me. If somebody stole my Facebook username and ID and got into my Facebook, within a few minutes, within a few interactions, it would become pretty clear that it wasn't me who was posting stuff and who was commenting. We are able to express ourselves in unprecedented ways. We are able to create data and share data, and I call this social data, in a way that simply didn't exist in history before. We live in the one-person history where we can create and recreate ourselves through the data we produce. Every 1.5 years, the amount of data we produce doubles. If we go back in history 20 years ago, that means what I produce now in 1 second is as much as I produced in 10,000 seconds then. Are you a physicist? Are you a data scientist? Are you a psychologist? Are you a consultant? Are you a professor? When I think about this, I think the honest answer is, I'm just Andreas.
Back in the day, right, if you had a big database, what you did was you wrote the biggest check that Sun Microsystems would take from you, right? Yeah. And you got the largest Sun box that money could buy, right? And if you had any cash left, you gave it to Oracle, right? And you put that software on that server, and everybody went to that centralized resource for all of their operations, right? And that was fine while data was at sort of human scale, when most records came from people, right? But what's transformed, what's happening these days is there's a lot more machine-generated data. Logs, sensor data, imagery, stuff streaming out of devices, right? That scales up with Moore's law in two ways, right? The more of those devices there are in the environment, the more data is getting generated, right? Yeah. And the faster and cheaper they get, the faster and cheaper data gets, right? So you can't keep up with that kind of large-scale distributed data generation unless you have large-scale distributed data storage. Back in the early 2000s, Google had this bad problem, right? They were ingesting the entire internet frequently, every couple of days. And they needed to process that data. And there was no way to basically build an index over the entire internet in a reasonable amount of time using any commercially available tool, right? They had documents, that is web pages, and then also their own logs that they were generating. They wanted to chew up and mine for value, right? And they couldn't go buy a document management system that would solve the problem for them. Right. So they designed and built this new infrastructure that they called MapReduce. Companies like Google and Facebook and Yahoo are several standard deviations out on the curve. Those guys are in the future, right? Yeah. We'll all get to those data volumes, but you don't have to be Google to want to use this technology today. A lot of people use this term big data. I don't actually like it very much because if I go talk to companies about it, they actually say, I just have medium-sized data. Right? I've got merely terabytes. Yahoo's got 25,000 servers, Facebook has 2 petabytes, Google runs 100,000 jobs for 10,000 applications. Hadoop is the open source implementation of the technology that Google invented, the MapReduce stuff that I talked about before. And by the way, Hadoop is an Apache software project. The really important early contributions came out of Yahoo. Yahoo invested early and significantly in the platform and did a great job at basically creating momentum. Yahoo, Facebook, and the other big web properties run this thing at scale in production every single day.
The internet is just another place for us to live. Everything that exists in the real world has an online equivalent. We go to war, we fall in love, we play, and we can do so with more people in more interesting ways than ever before. We've had thousands of years how to figure out to do things in the real world. We've had a scant few decades to do it online. Realize that you're in a frontier that has no inherent security. And the internet will become progressively more personal. I do more online now than I ever did 10 years ago, and I will do more in 10 years, I can guarantee it. But keep in mind that it isn't an anonymous medium, that you will have an identity out there, that there is an information sphere about you that you don't have control over. So when you go to tweet, realize somebody might be mining that to get to you. And when you go to use MySpace or Facebook or any form of social media, realize that you are giving up information about yourself, and that's okay, but you need to be conscious of it and realize it's for all time. It is out there and it is permanent. The dark cloud is, it's the dark side of the internet. It is the shadow for everything good that we're doing. The bad guys are maturing, they are making real money, and they're creating a very sophisticated supply chain and economic ecosystem. They're financially motivated. They sit around boardroom tables, they make investments, and they see returns. The dark cloud is the manifestation of that in technology. If you think about clouds, we sit around and we worry about legal contracts, we worry about liability. These bad guys are frankly hooking up with the criminals, literal criminals. They don't have niceties like law and lawyers and judges and courts and juries. They break kneecaps. The idea with the dark cloud is to make the entire business of crimeware financially not viable. It does require an investment to get those returns. So we've got to optimally drive up the cost for them. And then we can do that in 2 ways. We can make it expensive to break in, and the other way is we can make it really, really bad when they actually get caught. Well, there's one principle in security that is critical, which is that you don't get security through obscurity. If you try to hide the way you operate, then your big secret, the thing that is completely blown open, is how you do things. When that's actually discovered, your security vanishes. The best way to actually get security is to share how you do things. It's counterintuitive, but you want to create an open, objective, and understandable way of applying security. The keys should be the secret, not the way you do encryption. And when it comes to data, data is the thing you have to protect, but metadata is something we should be sharing. We should, in fact, be helping to immunize one another and sharing knowledge about where bad things are happening with one another to protect the greater community.
Consider surfing and watch what surfers do, and go surfing yourself. You'll learn a lot about how to manage data, waves of data, tides of data, oceans of data.